Hello, I'm providing a brief review on the anatomy and physiology of the GI tract. First things first, when we talk about proximal and distal, proximal means closer to the entry point of the GI tract, which would be the oral cavity. If we say that the structure is distal, that means it's closer to the end part of the GI tract, which would be the anus. Anterior refers to the front, as in the chest, and posterior refers to the back, as in the back or the rear end. So let's take a start. We'll start with the small intestine. It's about 21 feet in length. So in relation to the large intestine, that's about 10 feet in length. So why do we call it small when it's twice the size as the large intestine? And it derives its name from its small diameter size, which is approximately 1 inch as opposed to the diameter of the large intestine, which is 3 times that, around 3 inches. The first part of the small intestine is the duodenum, which is about 10 inches in length, and it begins at the pyloric sphincter. It is directly attached to the stomach and receives the chyme. The chyme is those gastric juices and partially digested food. Secretions from the pancreas and the liver enter here. The small intestine also secretes many other enzymes, so most of the digestion and absorption of water, minerals, and vitamins occurs in the small intestines. The intestinal enzymes complete the digestive process. Maltase, sucrase, and lactase complete carbohydrate digestion. Intestinal lipase completes fat digestion, and peptidase completes protein digestion. Many of our patients who have inflammatory disorders of the GI tract are lactose intolerant, and that's a condition that's characterized by indigestion when they consume dairy products. This occurs because the absorptive cells of the small intestine do not produce enough lactase. That's the enzyme that digests the milk sugar lactose. The lactose in the chyme is not digested. So bacteria in the large intestine ferment that undigested lactose, and this process causes gas. So in addition to that gassy symptoms, patients who are lactase intolerant also have abdominal cramping, bloating, and diarrhea. We diagnose lactose intolerance by using the hydrogen breath test. Lactose intolerant people have very little hydrogen in their breath. Hydrogen is one of the gases produced by the fermentation of lactose in the colon. Moving forward along the small intestines, the second part is the jejunum. It's about 3 feet long, and it runs from the duodenum to the ileum. The jejunum means empty in Latin, and it was named by the ancient Greeks, who noticed that it was always empty at death. There's no clear demarcation existing between the jejunum and the final segment of the small intestines, the ileum. The ileum is the longest part of the small intestines, and it measures about 6 feet in length. It's thicker, more vascular, and has more developed mucosal folds than the jejunum. It joins the cecum, the first part of the large intestine, at the ileocecal sphincter. And we can remember that ileocecal sphincter when we talked about appendicitis, because right below that ileocecal connection, you can see in the slide that finger-like projection, and that is your appendix. The large intestines is the end part of the alimentary canal, and it frames the small intestines on 3 sides. It is divided into 4 regions. We have the cecum, the colon, the rectum, and the anus. The ileocecal valve, located at the opening between the ileum and the large intestines, controls that flow of chyme from the small intestine to the large intestine. The cecum receives the contents of the ileum and continues with the absorption of water and salts. The residue of chyme that enters the large intestines contains very few nutrients except for water. Food residue leaving the sigmoid colon, and that's the very end of that large intestine, will enter the rectum to the anal canal, where it is expelled through defecation. There are several notable differences between the walls of the large and the small intestines. There are very few enzyme-secreting cells in the walls of the large intestines. However, the walls of the large intestines have a vast population of cells that secrete mucus. So why do we need these mucus-producing cells? Because that mucus allows for the ease of the movement of feces and enteric bacteria. Bacterial flora break down additional carbohydrate residue and synthesize certain vitamins. So in cases of severe inflammatory bowel disease, the large intestine can be removed by a procedure called a colectomy. So we're going to remove this whole large intestine. So they craft a fecal pouch from the very end of the small intestine and suture that, pull it through and suture it to the anus. If this is not an option, then they can create an ileostomy by bringing the distal ileum, the end part of the small intestines, through the abdominal wall, allowing the watery chyme to be collected in a bag-like adhesive appliance. So that is the end of the anatomy and physiology of the GI tract. Any further questions, please address them via email, or you can see me in my office. Thank you very much.